Accompanying his voice was a large palm that instantly slapped down upon that spot. However, it was completely empty. Supreme Exalt, he withdrew his palm and gazed at the divine talisman master, Brother Shenmo. The others gazed at the man called Shenmo as well, and their eyes carried questioning gazes as well. Shenmo shook his head and said, "My soul is much stronger than all of you. I'm not mistaken." When he spoke up to this point, he withdrew a talisman and tossed it up into the air. The talisman exploded into the air and emanated countless rays of dazzling light that covered the entire hall. Shenmo's brows slowly knit together as he gazed at the surroundings for some time. A short while later, he shook his head and said, "Perhaps I was mistaken." He sat back down once he finished speaking. Supreme Exalt, he nodded and said, "I'm sure all of you understand that if the heaven path isn't opened, then we would still face death even if we annihilate the defiant profounders. I presume many of you think that the outer heavens might let us out if we annihilate the defiant profounders in this world. That isn't completely unlikely. However, what if they refuse to let us out? Wouldn't our fate be in the hands of others? What do all of you think?" All of them fell silent. "But many people have to be killed, and it even includes the people on your side," said Inin. The corners of Supreme Exalt, his eyelids twitched slightly. He didn't dare underestimate that little girl as well. After all, he'd personally experienced how terrifying she was. "Supreme Exalt," he replied, "if we don't do this, then it might be all of us who dies instead. Conversely, if we do this, then we have a chance at keeping all those at the half-saint realm alive. Even though many will still die, at least some would be able to survive, right?" Inin asked, "Sacrificing them for a chance at survival? Is that what you mean?" "Supreme Exalt," he replied, "every man for himself. We have no other choice since we were born in this world." "Oh," replied Inin. She didn't speak another word, and she just sat on her chair and played with the two spatial rings in her hand. Supreme Exalt, he glanced at the others in the hall and said, "The hallowed Lord wouldn't have chosen this path if we were strong enough. But all of you should have seen what happened. The defiant profounders were far more terrifying than we imagined. Even if all the experts in the ancient city of Hallows join the battle, and all the secret trump cards of the various races and clans are used, the best outcome would be that we take the defiant profounders down with us. Are all of you willing to see that happen?" The members of Nameless City didn't speak a word, because they didn't belong to this world at all, and there was no one here that they cared about. They had no sense of responsibility or belonging here, so they remained silent, and silence represented approval. The hall remained silent for a long time before a gray-robed old man said, "Is this the hallowed Lord's decision?" "Yes," answered Supreme Exalt he. The gray-robed old man continued, "I have a question. If the outer heavens acts, then wouldn't it mean that quintessence violet energy would descend to this world, and then the defiant profounders would become saints?" Supreme Exalt, he replied, "We've thought of that a long time ago. At that time, the defiant profounders would be able to attain the saint realm, and we would naturally be able to do the same. All half-saints would have the opportunity to become saints. At that time, we can seize the moment when the experts of the outer heavens are fighting the defiant profounders to leave this world, because we would be entirely capable of shattering space with the strengths we possessed at that time, and we can travel to the world outside our world. If the outer heavens doesn't act, then we'll wait for the defiant profounders to slaughter everyone on Profounder Continent and utilize their resentment, baleful energy, and blood energy to forcefully destroy the heaven path." A long moment of silence ensued before the gray-robed old man nodded and said, "The devil race agrees. The demon race agrees as well." Another voice resounded, "The man clan agrees." All of them reached an agreement. Supreme Exalt, he started smiling. "The hallowed Lord created a spatial passageway earlier, and both I and Brother Mu traveled to Profounder Continent." He waved his right hand when he spoke up to this point, and then Little Yao and Ding Xiaoyao appeared here. He said, "One of them is Yang Ye's younger sister, while the other is his woman. Yang Yi will definitely fall under our control with them in our hands. Once Yang Yi arrives here, I'll force him to order the experts of Profounder Continent to fight the defiant profounders to the death. At that time, we'll be able to cause deaths while weakening the defiant profounders. It's like killing two birds with one stone. The gray-robed old man from the devil race asked, "Will he come?" "He definitely will." Supreme Exalt, his voice was filled with confidence. "Guards, lock these two women up in the prison of damnation." Supreme Exalt, he continued, "While we can't kill them, we can still make them suffer. Tell those fellows in the prison that they can do as they please, but don't kill them. Besides that, seal their cultivations and render them immobile. Don't allow them to take their own lives." It didn't take long for two experts from the hallowed halls to appear here, and they took Little Yao and Ding Xiaoyao away. Ding Xiaoyao suddenly glanced towards a certain corner when they were being taken away. Supreme Exalt, he and the others continued their discussion for quite some time before all of them left. After they left, killing intent surged explosively in the eyes of Yang Yi, who was hiding in the shadows. He's almost been noticed just now. He'd moved the instant that Shinemo spoke, and that was why he'd been able to avoid Supreme Exalt his attack. As for when Shinemo used that talisman, he'd immediately hid within the primordial pagoda. Even though he didn't know what talisman that was, he didn't dare act carelessly. Because that man was a divine talisman master, and he was even one who had come from the outer heavens. Sure enough, when the divine talisman emanated those rays of light, Yang Yi knew that he would definitely have been unable to continue hiding if he hadn't hidden within the primordial pagoda. The conversation between Supreme Exalt he and the others just now caused waves of shock to surge through Yang Ye's heart. He hadn't expected that the hallowed grounds actually intended to sacrifice everyone below the half-saint realm. If word of this were to spread... Yang Yi shook his head. Even if it were to spread, would anyone believe it? The people within the city would absolutely not. Moreover, he wasn't trying to be the savior of this world. Yang Ye's figure flashed, and he went after the two men who'd taken Little Yao and Ding Xiaoyao earlier. If anything happens to Little Yao and Xiaoyao, then I'll immediately create two saints and annihilate the entire hallowed grounds. Yang Yi rose his speed to its limits while boundless killing intent surged through his heart. However, he forcefully suppressed all of it. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to arrive at the so-called prison of damnation. Because he was concealing himself with the sword domain, he was able to enter it with ease. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to see Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao. At this moment, a group of men with bare upper bodies had surrounded them while they lay there at the center without being able to move at all. Only their eyes could move, and their eyes were filled with sadness. One of the men's hands moved towards Ding Xiaoyao. Suddenly, his hand just flew off into the air, and then a few rays of light flashed before all of them fell soundlessly to the ground. Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao's eyes were filled with bewilderment. Meanwhile, Yang Ye's voice resounded in their minds. "It's me. Don't be afraid. I'll take both of you out of here right now." The two of them instantly vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. After he placed them within the primordial pagoda, Yang Ye's figure flashed and shot out of the prison as swiftly as he could. However, a ray of light struck him when he'd just left the prison. Yang Yi closed his eyes and said in his heart, "Damn it." As expected, the two supreme exalts of the hallowed grounds were standing in front of him when he opened his eyes again. Besides the two of them, the others who were in the hall earlier were standing here as well. However, Inin wasn't present. 14 of the strongest experts in this world. Yang Yi, I never expected it to really be you, and I never expected that you would really dare to come here. I truly never expected this. I never expected this at all. Even though Yang Yi was using a completely different appearance right now, Supreme Exalt, he seemed to know that it was Yang Yi who was standing before him. Yang Yi glanced at the people here, and then his skin wriggled slightly before his original appearance was restored. "It's you." The divine talisman master's voice carried a trace of surprise when he saw Yang Ye's appearance. Yang Yi said, "I'm quite curious. How exactly did all of you notice me?" "It was me, of course." Shinemo smiled and said, "As a divine talisman master, how could I have made a low-level mistake like sensing something by mistake? Actually, I'm really very curious. How exactly did you avoid my divine light talisman's radiance in the hall just now? Even a saint rank movement technique wouldn't be able to avoid its radiance, Yet you were able to do just that. You want to know? Yang Yi said, why don't we go somewhere by ourselves and I'll explain it slowly, all right? Shinemo shook his head. Don't try to make me help you. There's no relationship between us, so I won't. Moreover, you seem to be quite composed, so I think you should have some sort of trump card. I'm really quite curious. What exactly is your trump card that it actually allows you to remain composed while facing so many supreme experts? Yang Yi glanced at them and said, what trump card could I possibly have? Not to mention that I'm all alone. Your joint forces are even sufficient to blast the hallowed grounds into pieces. Meanwhile, Supreme Exalt, he said, Yang Yi, hand the stone of suppression over. Out of consideration for the fact that you're an outstanding genius, I won't give you a death that's too painful. He was very clearly aware that Yang Yi had definitely heard what they discussed just now. So Yang Yi had to die no matter what. Yang Yi replied, but I don't want to die. Supreme Exalt, he laughed with ridicule and said, I know, no one wants to die. However, can you avoid death now? Not to mention that you're all alone. Even if those two experts who back you are here, they still wouldn't be able to save you. Hand the stone of suppression over and allow yourself to die a dignified death. Otherwise, you won't be able to die even if you beg for it. I still want to give it a try. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, the sword spirit appeared by his side, and then her voice resounded. 5-element sword. You're not going anywhere. Spatial confinement. The sword spirit hadn't even finished speaking when all the others besides Shinemo immediately acted. It was so swift that over a dozen palms and fists had arrived in front of Yang Yi and the sword spirit. Moreover, the space around them was instantly sealed by a strand of mysterious and unfathomable energy. It was like an iron wall, and it was so strong that despair appeared in the sword spirit's eyes. Sword domain. Yang Ye's voice resounded. As soon as Yang Ye's voice resounded, the palms and fists stopped as if they were frozen in midair. And then the spatial walls around Yang Yi instantly vanished. Flight. They immediately vanished once the sword spirit spoke that last word. Supreme Exalt, he and the others stared blankly ahead as they stood on the spot. After all, a monarch realm profounder had actually escaped from over a dozen experts who were high-grade half-saints. His aura is gone. He utilized the sword domain to conceal his aura. I can't locate him. A gray-robed old man spoke solemnly. As expected of the invincible sword domain, Shinemo said, according to rumor, the sword sect's founding ancestor relied on it to kill his way to the outer heavens, and he even crushed all obstacles before him throughout the heaven path. Now that I've witnessed its might today, it really is extraordinary. If he attains the half-saint realm and fully grasps its profundities, then our joint forces would be helpless against him. He won't be able to grow to that extent. Supreme Exalt, he and a few experts of the hallowed halls vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. Shinemo shook his head, and then he turned around and left, a few tens of thousands of kilometers away, within a cave in a mountain. You! The sword spirit, Ding Xiaoyao, and Little Yao stared blankly at Yang Yi, and tears were streaming out of Little Yao's eyes. At this moment, Yang Ye's appearance had changed completely. His black hair was completely white, snow white. His face had even instantly aged countless years, and it was covered in wrinkles. Besides his eyes that were still filled with spirit, Yang Yi, who stood before them, seemed to have completely transformed into an old man. Big brother. Little Yao instantly wrapped her arms around him and just held him tightly while crying, You! Why do you look like this? Yang Yi stretched out his hand to grab a strand of his hair, and a trace of bewilderment appeared in his eyes as he gazed at the snow-white hair in his hand. He said, Is this the price for forcefully utilizing the laws of the sword domain? Do you think that's all? Meanwhile, the sword spirit suddenly spoke angrily. Do you know how long your lifespan is now? 2 days. No, not even 2 days. The vitality within your body is gradually transforming into death energy now. In short, you're finished. 2 days. Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao's figures trembled when they heard this. Little Yao started crying even more while disbelief filled Ding Xiaoyao's eyes. Yang Yi rubbed little Yao's head and said, "It's fine. Don't cry. Your big brother's clothes are going to get drenched if you continue." However, little Yao started crying even more loudly. Yang Yi shook his head helplessly when he witnessed this. Ding Xiaoyao suddenly gazed at the sword spirit and said, "You definitely have a way to save him, right?" "I don't. This is the consequence of his own actions." The sword spirit was still angry. She disapproved of Yang Ye's intention to charge into the hallowed grounds. Sure enough, what she was worried about had happened. They'd almost died there. While they'd escaped now, the price Yang Yi paid was too great. Ding Xiaoyao walked over to the sword spirit and said, "It isn't the time to throw a fit. There's death energy within him, and he'll definitely die if we don't think of a way to deal with it. Moreover, you have to realize that we only have around a day of time left." "Only a day." Ding Xiaoyao's voice was trembling as she finished speaking. The sword spirit took a deep breath and said, "He actually has no lifespan left. The reason he's still alive is because of the profound energy within him. His profound energy has the ability to resist death energy, and that's why he's still able to live while he has no more lifespan. There's only a single way to save him, and it's to increase his lifespan. There are many ways to increase a person's lifespan, like advancing in one's cultivation, or treasures that can increase a person's lifespan. I don't think he can advance to the 7th rank of the monarch realm in a single day. As for treasures that increase the lifespan, there definitely are some in this world, but we don't have enough time at all." "Treasures that increase lifespan?" Ding Xiaoyao was stunned, and then she flipped her palm and the greenwood spirit appeared in her grasp. She said, "Will this work? What pure vitality!" There was a trace of surprise in the sword spirit's voice. She pondered deeply for a moment before she took it, and then she walked over to Yang Yi and slapped it onto his body. Bang! The greenwood spirit shattered, and then countless strands of dark green energy entered Yang Ye's body. The wrinkles on Yang Ye's face gradually vanished, and his appearance returned to normal after 2 hours passed. However, his snow-white hair hadn't changed back to black. "Why?" Ding Xiaoyao gazed at the sword spirit with a questioning gaze. The sword spirit explained, the greenwood spirit contained vitality, and it really was capable of increasing a person's lifespan. However, it was far from sufficient. Now, he can live for half a month. Moreover, there's death energy within him. That death energy isn't man-made death energy. It's death energy formed from the supreme laws of the Heaven Tao. So, if he isn't able to increase his lifespan in this half a month of time, then he will still die. Ding Xiaoyao turned to look at Yang Yi and said, "You're confident in your ability to attain the 7th rank of the monarch realm in half a month, right?" Yang Yi replied, "I can try." "Try." The sword spirit spoke coldly. "You have a few dozen 1,000-year-old fire crystals, so you really can give it a try. But what if you fail? Or someone interrupts you? Or perhaps some other mishap occurs? At that time, even a god wouldn't be able to save you. Understand?" Yang Yi laughed bitterly and said, "Don't get so agitated. Let's just talk nicely with each other." "Agitated?" She roared furiously. "I told you not to be rash and plan before your act. If you don't change your character, then you'll get yourself killed one day." Yang Yi said, "Do you know what would have happened to Xiaoyao and little Yao if I was a step too late? Even though I only have half a month of life now, it was all worth it to me, because I've saved both of them." "Big brother." Little Yao buried her head in his chest and hugged him tightly. Ding Xiaoyao glanced at Yang Yi and remained silent. The sword spirit fell silent as well. Yang Yi continued, "No matter what, the outcome is a good one, because I'm still alive and both little Yao and Xiaoyao are still alive as well. Half a month is entirely sufficient for me, because my foundation isn't weak, and I have that many 1,000-year-old fire crystals. Even if I have to pile them up within me to gain enough energy, I'll do it until I attain the 7th rank of the monarch realm." The sword spirit gazed at him for a long time, and then she suddenly said angrily, "What are you still looking at me for? Am I that nice to look at? Quickly go and cultivate." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. For the sake of his survival, Yang Yi cultivated more desperately than he ever had. He immediately placed 10 1,000-year-old fire crystals before himself and swallowed 2 more 1,000-year-old fire crystals. As soon as they entered his body, countless strands of pure energy instantly swept through his body, and Yang Yi hurriedly focused his mind. "Come with me for a while," the sword spirit suddenly spoke to Ding Xiaoyao. Ding Xiaoyao was slightly stunned, and then she walked out of the cave with the sword spirit. After they moved a little bit away from the cave, the sword spirit suddenly attacked, and a few dozen rays of sword energy enveloped Ding Xiaoyao. Ding Xiaoyao was stunned again, and her eyes were filled with bewilderment. "Who exactly are you?" The sword spirit spoke in a low voice. "What do you mean?" A bewildered expression still remained in Ding Xiaoyao's eyes. The sword spirit replied, "You can deceive Yang Yi and even everyone else, but you can't deceive me. There's an extremely terrifying force within you, and it doesn't belong to this world. Moreover, you should have noticed Yang Yi in the hall earlier, right? So who exactly are you? Why exactly are you staying by Yang Ye's side?" The bewilderment in Ding Xiaoyao's eyes vanished. She gazed at the sword spirit for a long time before she said, "Is that important?" The sword spirit laughed coldly and said, "Of course it is. Yang Yi is a fool and a pervert. He's easily charmed by women. You clearly possess formidable strength, yet you're acting like a weakling and staying by his side. That's truly unbelievable to me. Don't tell me it's because you love him. No one would believe that." Ding Xiaoyao suddenly turned around and gazed at the cave that Yang Yi was cultivating in. A short while passed before she said, "I've never harmed him. Of course, I might not even be able to with the strength he possesses. Then why are you concealing your strength? Why are you staying by his side?" asked the sword spirit. Ding Xiaoyao said, "Concealing my strength? I didn't. I can use that strength, but if I do, then I might not be myself in the future. Indeed, I would become very strong, but so what? I wouldn't be myself anymore. So, what's the point of becoming strong?" When she spoke up to this point, she gazed at the sword spirit and continued, "You should have experienced such a feeling. The sword spirit of the past was close to Yang Yi, but the true you isn't. However, if I'm not wrong, since you've fused into one with the sword spirit of the past, you should have some of her emotions and feelings, right?" The sword spirit answered, "You're right. The reason I'm staying with him is mostly because of the past me. But so what? You should have really hated Yang Yi in the beginning, right?" said Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit replied, "He said you are very smart. Now I believe him." Ding Xiaoyao chuckled, "No matter what, I know that you have no ill intent towards Yang Yi, and it doesn't matter if it's because of the old sword spirit or because of something else. As for me, all I can say is that we met by chance. Regardless of what happens in the future, I won't harm him, just like you won't." The sword spirit gazed at Ding Xiaoyao for a long time, and she was about to speak when she suddenly looked up towards the sky and said, "Shit! Experts of the hallowed halls are coming." Supreme Exalt he and an old man in a dark golden robe appeared where the sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao were standing just moments ago. Supreme Exalt he glanced at the surroundings and said, "Brother Mu, you sensed it too, right?" The old man nodded and said, "Both of us did, so it should be right." Supreme Exalt he spoke seriously, "That kid's sword domain is truly terrifying. If he attains the half-saint realm and grasps the energy of the laws, then both of us wouldn't be able to harm him. Moreover, if he lives, then it'll probably be quite difficult for the Defiant Profounders to annihilate the inhabitants of Profounder Continent. Most importantly, the Stone of Suppression is in his possession. If it falls into the Defiant Profounders' hands, then it would undoubtedly be a huge problem for us. So he must die no matter what." The old man nodded and said, "I've asked the Devil Exalt and Demon Monarch to guard the teleportation formation which leads to Profounder Continent. Yang Yi will absolutely not be able to return while they are there." Yang Ye's ability to conceal his aura. A wisp of worry flashed through Supreme Exalte's eyes. The old man stated, "It's fine. Grandmaster Shenemo has set up a formation there. Yang Yi will definitely be unable to hide himself if he goes there." "Good." Supreme Exalt he glanced at the surroundings again, and then his gaze descended onto a mountain in the distance. He pondered deeply for a moment, and then he suddenly raised his right hand and slapped it towards the mountain. An enormous palm that was even larger than the mountain instantly smashes against it. Bang! The mountain collapsed while endless dust and dirt arose into the air. Moreover, countless large rocks shot towards the surroundings. A long time passed before the old man said, "Looks like they've left. Let's go." Our divine senses are able to cover an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers, so we'll immediately notice their presence if they dare to show themselves. Let me see if he'll be able to escape us again. The two of them vanished while they spoke. Around 2 hours passed before the ground in the distance trembled slightly, and then it didn't take long for the ground to split apart and Xianxia's group to emerge from below. That was close. The sword spirit said, "Xiaoyao, if you didn't ask us to tunnel into the ground, then we probably would have been buried beneath that mountain. We must not go 3M away from Yangyi in the future. Otherwise, we might not be so lucky next time." Ding Xiaoyao said, "The two supreme exalts of the hallowed halls are searching themselves. Looks like they really want to eliminate us. We definitely won't be able to return to Profounder Continent because the teleportation formation is surely being guarded. Conversely, so long as we dare to expose our presence in the hallowed grounds, then they'll be able to find us in an instant. This is quite a bad situation." The sword spirit shook her head and said, "We can't be bothered about all of that for now. Let's look for a safe place and allow Yang Yi to advance in his cultivation. He can deal with the rest once his strength improves." The sword spirit glared at Yang Yi when she spoke up to this point, and then she transformed into a ray of light that entered Yang Ye's body. Yang Yi smiled as he gazed at Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao, who had worried expressions on their faces, and he said, "Don't worry. I'll take both of you back to Profounder Continent." Ding Xiaoyao suddenly asked, "Would you have come to save me if Little Yao wasn't there with me? Would you do the same even if you did come for me?" Yang Yi replied, "What do you think?" She answered, "I'm aware of the status she possesses in your heart, but I don't know what sort of status I possess." Yang Yi looked her in the eyes and said, "When I found out that both of you had been captured, my first thought was that I must save both of you, and it wasn't that I must save Little Yao." Ding Xiaoyao cracked a smile and said, "Is that a confession?" Yang Yi was speechless. "That world within your body is your greatest secret, right?" Ding Xiaoyao suddenly changed the topic. Yang Yi nodded. "In the past, only your wives were allowed to know about that greatest secret of yours. Now that I know about it as well, what will you do?" asked Ding Xiaoyao. "Then be my sister-in-law." Little Yao spoke abruptly. Yang Yi felt speechless again. Ding Xiaoyao shook her head and smiled. She rubbed Little Yao's head and said, "You really are his younger sister." They didn't chat for long. Yang Yi placed Ding Xiaoyao and Little Yao within the primordial pagoda before he started cultivating like a madman again. Yang Yi felt that when a person was about to die, the potential that would erupt from that person was absolutely unparalleled. Just like this very moment, he was more serious and worked much harder than he ever had during his cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. At this moment, Yang Yi still hadn't broken through, but the aura he possessed was gradually growing stronger. The sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao's eyes were filled with worry because Yang Ye's face had a jet black tinge to it. Moreover, dense death energy was seeping out incessantly from within him. It would be fine if he broke through, but if he didn't, then it represented that he would face death. In next to no time, the last day arrived. But Yang Yi still hadn't broken through. Both of their expressions were extremely gloomy. At this moment, Yang Ye's entire face was jet black, and the death energy within him was horrifyingly dense. It caused both the sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao to dare not get close to him. "Do you have any other way to save him?" asked Ding Xiaoyao solemnly. The sword spirit shook her head in response. "Life, death, age, and sickness are part of the supreme laws of the Heaven Tao. They are the eternal laws of the universe. The death energy within him isn't man-made, so the only way to survive is to fight for it with the heavens itself. Actually, it's truly a miracle that he's still alive right now. In my opinion, the violet energy within him isn't quintessence violet energy. because it's impossible for quintessence violet energy to keep someone alive when that person's lifespan is exhausted. That's a secret of his, said Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit said, now, we can only pray that he breaks through. Otherwise, prepare for his burial. Time passed by slowly, and the countenances of the sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao turned paler and paler. Because Yang Yi seemed like a dead man no matter what. He had snow-white hair, a jet-black face, and was covered in the energy of death. He's beyond saving. The sword spirit closed her eyes. Bang! Suddenly, a strand of aura suddenly surged out from within Yang Yi. The sword spirit opened her eyes, and there was undisguised happiness on her face. I knew it! I knew that fool wouldn't die so easily. Ding Xiaoyao heaved a huge sigh of relief as well, because Yang Yi was at the 7th rank of the monarch realm now. Moreover, the death energy around Yang Yi had vanished while Yang Yi's face was gradually becoming rosy once more. How long will he be able to live now? Asked Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit sized Yang Yi up carefully and replied, around 2 months of time. That little? How could that be possible? Ding Xiaoyao felt disbelief. A single breakthrough would give him 10 years of life at least. How could it only be 2 months? The sword spirit explained, his situation is different. He activated the sword domain by force, and it instantly transformed him into a dead person. In other words, he had negative lifespan before this. 2 months. Ding Xiaoyao's brows knit together tightly as she said, he either has to break through again or find treasures to increase his lifespan within 2 months. Otherwise, he'll still die, right? Yes, the sword spirit said. He isn't such a genius to advance again in 2 months of time. Even if he can, I don't suggest it, because forcefully increasing his cultivation would harm his foundation. So, we must find some treasures to increase his lifespan during this period. Alas, how troublesome. We already have to avoid the defiant profounders and hallowed grounds. Now we even have to look for treasures to increase his lifespan. How truly troublesome. It's fine so long as there's a chance, said Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit shook her head and said, Profounder continent is in a very bad situation right now, because both the hallowed grounds and defiant profounders want to destroy it. Moreover, the current strength of Profounder continent isn't able to resist any one of them. So, I feel that he must abandon the Profounder continent, otherwise he'll be burdened to death by it. He won't, Ding Xiaoyao said. So long as they don't betray him, then he won't betray them. I don't know if he'll be able to protect the continent, but he'll definitely do his best. He's that sort of person. He will never give up on you if you stand on his side. That's why I chose him over the mortal emperor, Luo Jun. All of you will be the death of him. The sword spirit spoke coldly. If he gives up everything and focuses on the sword, then I guarantee that his attainments will absolutely not be inferior to the sword sect's founding ancestor, and it might even surpass my first master. Ding Xiaoyao suddenly said, Do you know why he cultivates the sword Dao? Do you know why he wants to get stronger? The sword spirit remained silent. Ding Xiaoyao continued, He doesn't cultivate the sword Dao and works hard to become stronger so that he can live forever. He hopes to possess strength to protect those he cares about. If you make him choose between the sword and those he cares about, then what do you think he would choose? You know the answer. So, it's impossible for him to abandon everyone and focus on cultivating in the sword Dao with you. Nothing is impossible. The sword spirit said, He'll choose the sword once his mind is clear. Ding Xiaoyao shook her head and stopped arguing, and then she gazed at Yang Yi instead. When she saw Yang Yi still seated there with his eyes closed, she couldn't help but ask, What's he doing? The sword spirit's gaze descended onto Yang Yi. She gazed at him for a short while before happiness suddenly appeared in her eyes. He's actually comprehending. What a surprise. Ding Xiaoyao was slightly stunned, and then she nodded while happiness appeared in her eyes as well. The comprehending they spoke of was actually quite vague and impossible to discern clearly, because it didn't point to anything specific. Or perhaps it should be said that it represented many things. Sometimes, 10 years of cultivation couldn't compare to a day of comprehension. No matter what Yang Yi was comprehending, they had no doubt that it was extraordinarily good news for Yang Yi. It surprises me as well. A voice suddenly resounded out of nowhere. Both the sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao's expressions changed drastically at the same time, and then they looked over to the source of the voice. They saw a woman standing not too far from them. She wore a linen dress, a chain around her body, and had bare feet. It was Nether Maiden. Ding Xiaoyao and the sword spirit seemed like they were facing a powerful enemy when they saw Nether Maiden. The sword spirit even intended to attack right away. However, she was stopped by Ding Xiaoyao. "She only needs an instant and all of us will die here," said Ding Xiaoyao. After all, Nether Maiden just had to notify the experts of the hallowed grounds, and then Supreme Exalt he and the other Supreme Exalt would be here. At that time, they wouldn't have even the slightest chance at survival. Because Yang Yi wouldn't be able to utilize the sword domain again. Nether Maiden glanced at Ding Xiaoyao and said, "Reincarnation of fate and destiny. I never expected you to actually be able to resist the temptation of strength. How rare." Ding Xiaoyao's expression changed slightly. Meanwhile, Nether Maiden's gaze shot towards Yang Yi. Her brows knit together slightly when she saw Yang Ye's white hair, and she said, "That's the price he had to pay for forcefully utilizing the sword domain?" Suddenly, Yang Yi opened his eyes. She asked, "What did you comprehend?" Yang Yi flicked with his finger, and then a strand of sword intent shot out from the tip of his finger. Nether Maiden's expression changed when she saw it, and she actually flashed off and didn't dare collide head-on with it. The sword intent struck a huge tree in the distance, and it pierced through it with ease. However, just like Nether Maiden, the sword spirit and Ding Xiaoyao's eyes carried shock within them, because the huge tree had actually withered in an instant, and then it transformed into a pile of dirt. The energy of the laws. Nether Maiden's voice carried a strand of seriousness. Yang Yi opened his palm, and a strand of sword intent appeared there. The sword intent couldn't be seen with the eye, but it could be felt. Yang Yi said while he felt the sword intent in his palm, "Earlier, at the instant my body was filled with death energy, I truly felt what death was like. It was a very strange feeling. A truly bizarre feeling. It was something that could only be sensed yet is impossible to describe." When he spoke up to this point, Yang Yi flicked with his finger again, and the sword intent in his palm pierced through another huge tree over 300 m away. Just like the previous tree, it instantly withered before transforming into a pile of dirt. Yang Yi said, "Everything in this world has a moment of decay. It's a supreme law of the Heaven Tao, and it's a law that has remained for eternity. From now on, this sword intent of mine will be called Decay Sword Intent." Decay Sword Intent. The sword spirit was overjoyed. There are millions of laws and Daos in the world. While I don't know how strong that decay laws of yours is, it's definitely up there at the top. Nether Maiden said, "Your sword intent contains the energy of decay, and it carries the strength of the Grand Tao. Besides those few supreme experts, anyone else in this world would die upon contact with it." "What about you?" asked Yang Yi. She replied, "What do you think?" Yang Yi answered, "It can't kill you. However, you didn't dare to collide head-on with it just now. In other words, it can pose a threat to you, right?" "Yes," Nether Maiden said. "If you activate the sword domain and suffuse it with the energy of decay, then I would run as far as I can from you. However, you don't seem to be able to activate the sword domain now." Yang Yi asked, "Are you here to kill me?" She replied, "You wouldn't be standing here unharmed if I'd come to kill you, right?" Yang Yi gazed at her for a short while, and then he said, "Actually, I really don't want to be enemies with you. You want to leave for the outer heavens, and I can help you get there. But the precondition is that you're not with the hallowed grounds. If you stay with them, then I'm truly afraid that I might really treat you as my enemy one day." Nether Maiden remained silent for a short while, and then she said, "We won't be able to leave this world without killing the defiant profounders." "You're mistaken," Yang Yi explained. "Firstly, you're absolutely incapable of killing all the defiant profounders. Even if you can, just ask yourself this. How many of you would be still alive? Even if Profounder Continent joins forces with the hallowed grounds, it would still be impossible to annihilate the defiant Profounders. At the very least, both sides would suffer heavy casualties. At that time, we wouldn't be able to resist the outer heavens at all. Nether Maiden remained silent. Yang Yi continued, "Do you know what the hallowed grounds and the defiant Profounders are planning? They want to form a pillar of blood. You definitely don't know what that is, so let me explain. They desire the deaths of all the inhabitants of Profounder continents and all the useless people beneath the half-saint realm in the hallowed grounds. In the end, they intend to utilize the blood, resentment, and baleful energy from the deaths of tens of billions to break open the heaven path. In other words, everyone beneath the half-saint realm will have to die. Understand?" Nether Maiden's pupils constricted. "Is that true?" Yang Yi answered, "Do you think that I would lie to you?" Disbelief appeared in her eyes. Yang Yi continued, "Just think about it. Did the experts in the ancient city of Hallows leave the city to rescue the others outside the city when the defiant Profounders started slaughtering them? No, not a single expert left the city. Of course, you can say that the defiant Profounders are too strong, and those experts didn't want to make unnecessary sacrifices. But do you believe such a reason? If those two supreme exalts and the other supreme experts of the hallowed grounds were to leave the city, then would ordinary defiant Profounders even be capable of stopping them?" The sword spirit spoke as well. "The hallowed grounds will only keep the half-saints and those about to become half-saints alive. As for the others, only death awaits them. Of course, while you're only at the exalt realm, I believe that the hallowed grounds will absolutely not allow you to die. So, you can join them and use the lives of countless people in exchange for a chance at your own survival." Nether Maiden stood silently on the spot for a long time, and then she turned around and walked away. However, she suddenly stopped moving after walking a short distance, and she said, "It doesn't matter to me regardless of how many people die. However, I refuse to sacrifice others in exchange for a chance at survival, and I refuse to entrust my hopes onto others. I'll enter into closed-door cultivation once I return to the ancient city of Hallows, and I'll attain the half-saint realm as quickly as possible. At that time, my life wouldn't have been fated to end if I'm able to charge out into the outer heavens. If I fail, then it was my fate as well. Good luck to you too." Her figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the horizon. Suddenly, Ding Xiaoyao said, "She's only at the exalt realm." Yang Yi and the sword spirit's eyes surged with shock when they heard this. They'd constantly overlooked a fact, and it was her realm of cultivation. Since the very beginning, Nether Maiden had always been only at the exalt realm, but she was able to kill half-saints. Moreover, she could even fight Yang Yi equally after he'd attained the monarch realm. The sword spirit said, "How strong is she?" Yang Yi replied, "I'm probably unable to kill her even if I use the sword domain and my decay sword intent. Just like in Nanjing, Nether Maiden was another existence in the younger generation who he wasn't confident in his ability to defeat." "What do you plan on doing now?" asked the sword spirit. Yang Yi was about to speak when Ding Xiaoyao suddenly said, "We can't return to Profounder Continent for now. It should be safe with Elder Mu and Senior Lu guarding it. However, once the defiant Profounders have finished killing the people in the hallowed grounds, then it'll probably be time for them to attack Profounder Continent. Once that happens, Elder Mu and Senior Lu will definitely be unable to stop them." When she spoke up to this point, Ding Xiaoyao paused for a moment before she continued, "Of course, the even more pressing issue is your lifespan. You don't have much time to live. So, we have to find treasures that can increase your lifespan as soon as possible. That's the true important matter at hand. Because if you do die, then Profounder Continent won't have a chance at all." Yang Yi suddenly asked, "Sword Spirit, how many sword servants can you refine?" She replied, "An infinite amount." Yang Yi said, "Amongst the three forces in this world, our side is the weakest because our half-saints are inferior in both quantity and quality. So, even if I'm able to increase my lifespan and return to the continent, it still won't help the situation that Profounder Continent is facing." Ding Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. "You intend to gather the corpses of half-saints here? That's a very good idea. However, the experts of the hallowed grounds are hiding within the city, and the experts of the hallowed grounds outside the city aren't a match for the defiant profounders. So, it isn't very likely for you to be able to gather a huge number of corpses. If there aren't corpses, then I'll make corpses. Xianxia's voice carried a trace of ghastly killing intent. That's a great idea, the sword spirit said. So long as we're able to collect a huge number of corpses from half-saints, and especially if those corpses belong to the defiant profounders, then it would greatly increase our strength. However, you must be careful, and you absolutely can't get caught by the high-grade half-saints amongst the defiant profounders. While your current strength can pose a threat to high-grade half-saints, it's insufficient to kill them. Xianxia nodded and said, I know. Your main objective still has to be locating treasures that increase your lifespan. Ding Xiaoyao reminded. The half-saints of the oceanic clans, Devil Race and Demon Race had once helped the hallowed grounds to fight our southern territory. At that time, it seemed to be because the hallowed grounds had given them divine spirit fruits which could increase their lifespan. So we can head to the ancient city of Hallows. The ancient city of Hallows? The sword spirit frowned. Are you asking him to go give his life away? Ding Xiaoyao explained. The most dangerous place is the safest place. I think that the hallowed grounds would never expect us to return there. Of course, you still have to be careful. Xianxia nodded and said, There's no time to lose. Let's go right now. Wait, the sword spirit suddenly said. What's wrong with that violet-colored little fellow? The little fellow? Xianxia was stunned, and then he looked into the primordial pagoda. At this moment, the little fellow was lying quietly in her room. Moreover, countless strands of violet energy were converging towards her from all directions. Moreover, she was even emanating an illusory violet glow. When did she start to advance? Xianxia was astounded. The sword spirit shook her head and said, It probably started very long ago, but the energy within her is very unstable, and it frequently emanated rays of violet light that explode in the surroundings. Moreover, those rays of violet light just happen to be very destructive. Xianxia's senses sunk deep into himself. Sure enough, it was exactly as the sword spirit said. Rays of violet light frequently flashed out from the little fellow's body, and they flickered around incessantly while leaving black holes behind. What's she doing? Said Xianxia. The sword spirit said, She's on the verge of breaking through. However, she seems to be unable to grasp it. Xianxia asked, Is she in danger? The sword spirit shook her head. Probably not. Xianxia was about to say something when a voice suddenly resounded from the horizon. We missed a few, a half-saint and 2 ants. Ha. As soon as he finished speaking, an enormous palm that blotted out the sky flashed into existence and pressed down towards Xianxia's group. Try you decay sword intent and let us see how strong it is, said the sword spirit. Xianxia nodded, and then he flicked with his finger. A strand of pure sword intent shot off from the tip of his finger. The strand of sword intent was definitely like an ant before an elephant when it faced the enormous palm. However, when they both collided, what sword intent is that? A horrified and furious howl resounded from the horizon. It didn't take long for a back-robed man to appear before Xianxia's group. At this moment, his palm was gradually drying up as if it had experienced the passage of hundreds of years. Moreover, the vitality within him was leaking out like a torrent. The man looked very young in the beginning, but now he was quickly aging before them at a visible speed. How could this be possible? The man gazed at his hand in horror. His hand had turned completely pale and was withered like a stick. He raised his head to look at Xianxia as he said, Tell me what sword intent this is. Decay, replied Xianxia. Decay. A wisp of bewilderment flashed through his eyes as he muttered softly, and then his figure stiffened on the spot. A gust of wind blew by, and the man's figure transformed into dust that was swept away by the wind. How powerful! Ding Xiaoyao spoke solemnly. The sword spirit said, Decay is like death. Even the regions in space throughout the boundless universe experience a moment of death, let alone people. Then isn't Yang Ye's decay laws invincible? Said Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit shook her head and said, there are a myriad of laws in the world, and every single one of them has their own advantage and reason that they are strong. Not to mention any other laws. Just Nether Maiden's laws aren't inferior to Yang Ye's. Moreover, it might even be stronger. What law has she grasped? Asked Yang Yi. The laws of yin and yang. The sword spirit's voice was slightly solemn. The reversal of yin and yang. However, that isn't a huge deal. But if she can reverse the laws and overturn it, then not to mention you, even your master, Elder Mu, and Senior Lu will have to flee before her. Yang Yi took a deep breath, looked up into the sky, and said, Sword Spirit, are the people in the outer heavens really extremely strong? She nodded and replied, I'm not saying that their natural talent surpasses the natural talent of the inhabitants of this world, and I'm not saying that all of you'll really be like ants upon arriving there. Not to mention anyone else, just the strength and natural talent of the Sword Sect's founding ancestor, the Unfettered One, can be considered to be top-rate at the outer heavens. As for the geniuses of this generation, the natural talent possessed by Nether Maiden and Nanjing, and you would be shocking even in the outer heavens. Then why is this world so weak? Asked Ding Xiaoyao. The sword spirit fell silent for a long time before she said, There are many reasons. A stellar region is formed from countless worlds, and there naturally is a difference in strength between these worlds. Just like a few twins, the accomplishments of those twins would definitely vary. Most importantly, it was because the experts of this world were too weak and stupid all those years ago. What do you mean? Asked Yang Yi. She explained, Any world that is sealed off would definitely suffer decline. Of course, the past experts of this world were idiotic to the extreme, because they didn't allow this world to join the outer heavens and merge with the other worlds in this region. So, regardless of whether its cultivation techniques, combat techniques, or its civilization as a whole, it's very much inferior to the other worlds. It naturally wouldn't affect this world in the beginning, but as time passed. When she spoke up to this point, her voice became solemn as she said, Just like this very moment, since it's lagging behind and inferior to the other worlds, it suffers and is bullied. Understand. The Sword Sect's founding ancestor was so strong all those years ago. Why didn't he lead this world into the outer heavens? Asked Yang Yi. She shook her head and said, A pair of fists is no match for many. No matter how strong he was, could he fight the entire outer heavens? After all, there definitely were existences in the outer who were stronger than him. Moreover, the forces in the outer heavens had joined forces with the intention of crushing the defiant Profounders all those years ago. If the Sword Sect's founding ancestor led this world there, then it represented that he would have to fight countless powers and experts from the outer heavens. Not to mention he was all alone. Even 10 experts on par with him wouldn't be sufficient. The sword spirit suddenly stopped speaking, and then she gazed at Yang Yi and said, You're finished! Indeed. Ding Xiaoyao nodded with agreement. Yang Yi laughed bittered. He was finished indeed. Because if he wanted to save the inhabitants of Profounder Continent, then it meant that he would have to lead them into the outer heavens. But if he did that, then it would be equivalent to going against countless powers and experts in the outer heavens. Even 10 experts like the Sword Sect's founding ancestor wouldn't have been sufficient to accomplish that, so wasn't he finished if he intended to do that now? Yang Yi shook his head and said, Let's not think about that for now, because even our survival is a problem right now. Ding Xiaoyao nodded and said, The heavens always leave a way out. You'll be able to find it. The heavens don't exist in this world anymore. The sword spirit spoke coldly. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Yang Yi didn't wait a second longer and immediately rushed to the ancient city of Hallows. At this moment, he merely changed his appearance yet kept his hair snow white. Of course, he was constantly utilizing the sword domain to conceal his aura, and he would naturally be fine if the sword domain didn't suffer any powerful attacks that he couldn't resist. All along the way, Yang Yi encountered countless corpses. The corpses were in quite horrifying states. According to the sword spirit, the defiant Profounders had done so intentionally because they wanted the dead to be unable to rest in peace and surge with resentment. People were capable of anything when they faced a hopeless situation. All of this further firmed his resolve to prevent the defiant profounders from coming to profounder continent. Yang Yi entered safely into the city again with the sword spirit's help. Yang Yi was shocked when he entered the city and saw the situation in the city. At this moment, the ancient city of Hallows was actually filled with corpses, and there were even people fighting incessantly in the city. The defiant profounders breached the city? Yang Yi stretched out his hand and grabbed over one of the people in the distance. That person gazed at Yang Yi with horror, and he was about to say something when Yang Yi spoke before him. "What's going on? Have the defiant profounders got into the city?" The man swallowed down a mouthful of saliva. He was clearly terrified of Yang Yi. "You'll die if you don't answer me quickly." Yang Yi squeezed down a little on the man's neck. The man hurriedly said, "It isn't the defiant profounders. We're fighting for a treasure." "A treasure? Explain properly." Yang Yi frowned. The man said, "2 days ago, a saint spirit fruit capable of allowing others to instantly become half-saints appeared within the city. So long as one can consume it, then one would be able to immediately break through all barriers and attain the half-saint realm." When he spoke up to this point, the man seemed excited, and his eyes were filled with fervor and excitement. "There isn't just one of those fruits. There are many. I'll be able to instantly break through to the half-saint realm by seizing any one of them." "Instantly attain the half-saint realm?" Yang Yi asked. "Do you even believe that?" "I do," the man said. "Many of us saw someone get one of the fruits and instantly become a half-saint. It's true." Yang Ye's brows knit together tightly. He glanced at the surroundings and said, "So many people have died in the city. Is the hallowed halls not doing anything about it?" "The hallowed halls?" The man was stunned for a moment before he said, "They did in the beginning, but then they didn't take any further action. So that's what's going on." Yang Yi understood now. It was probably a scheme of the hallowed halls. It naturally couldn't act and kill the people in the city who hadn't attained the half-saint realm. After all, many people in the city would definitely fight back if that were to happen. But if they used such a method, then not only would no one fight back, they could even save a lot of effort. Because the people in the city would fight and kill themselves, and the hallowed halls only had to watch coldly from afar and add fuel to the flame at the critical moment. The hallowed grounds has started to make its move. In the hallowed grounds' opinion, everyone else beneath the half-saint realm was a burden to them. So it was best for such people to just die. Moreover, their deaths would even increase the amount of resentment, baleful energy, and blood energy in the world. "Brother, I heard that there's a saint spirit fruit in Lunar Right Hall. Many have headed over there. With your strength, you might be able to seize it if you head over quickly." The man hadn't even finished speaking when he felt something flash before his eyes, and then Yang Yi had vanished. "How strong!" The man broke out in cold sweat. Even though Yang Yi was hostile to the hallowed grounds, he had some feelings for Lunar Right Hall. After all, its members had helped him quite a bit when he needed it. So he naturally couldn't stand by idly. Lunar Right Hall. At this moment, it was completely surrounded. There were Monarch Realm experts, Exalt Realm experts, and even Spirit Realm experts amongst the people here. As for the members of Lunar Right Hall, Mu Qingfeng led the group as they stood in confrontation with the others who'd surrounded Lunar Right Hall. Moreover, there were some corpses around Mu Qingfeng's group, and most of them were the corpse of Lunar Right Hall's members. At this moment, Mu Qingfeng's veil was blood-red, and there were no less than a few dozen injuries on her. "Luo Chongxiao Gu Yuexian. I told you that my Lunar Right Hall doesn't have a saint spirit fruit." Mu Qingfeng spoke in a low voice. Gu Yuexian grunted coldly and said, "Why should we believe you? Mu Qingfeng, I'll give you one last chance. Otherwise, everyone from Lunar Right Hall can just die today. Wouldn't we be letting them off too easily if we do that?" The man by Gu Yuexian's side spoke ferociously. "Everyone, let's kill the men of Lunar Right Hall, but keep the women alive. The women of Lunar Right Hall are all the best women of the hallowed halls. Don't you want to give them a try? Don't worry, all of you'll be able to enjoy them to your heart's content. Especially the Hall Master of Lunar Right Hall." She always acted high and mighty in the past. Now, I'll make her scream beneath all of you. Ha ha ha. That's a good idea. I've been waiting to play with them for such a long time. It would be a waste not to. Ha ha ha. The members of Lunar Right Hall were furious. They were about to attack, but Mu Qingfeng stopped them. Her gaze descended onto the man who stood by Gu Yuexian's side and said, Lu Chongxiao, Gu Yuexian. Both of you planned this, right? So what if we did? Lu Chongxiao's voice was icy cold. Since that fellow young man isn't here anymore, then Lunar Right Hall will pay the price for him. Don't worry, I won't kill the women of Lunar Right Hall once we have our fun with them. I'll cripple their cultivations and put them on the streets so that everyone can have a go. Mu Qingfeng, you won't be an exception. I wanted that woman, Fu Jingxian, that day, but Lunar Right Hall obstructed me. Now, I'll allow all of you to know the price you have to pay for helping young man that day, said Gu Yuexian. Kill the men and keep the women alive. Attack. As soon as he finished speaking, Luo Chongxiao led the charge towards the group from Lunar Right Hall. Since the hallowed halls wasn't interfering, the ancient city of Hallows could be said to be without order. Coupled with the fact that the defiant profounders were just outside the city and the shadow of death was looming above everyone, the inhabitants of the city had started to go into a frenzy. In the beginning, many had started killing for the Saint Spirit fruit. After all, chaos was upon them, and they could only survive if they possessed strength. But it didn't take long for their killing to be unrelated to the Saint Spirit fruit. Since there was no order here, the wild ambition and selfish desires of people were gradually exposed. A wisp of a resolute and ferocious expression flashed through Mu Qingfeng's eyes as she watched Gu Yuexian and Lu Chongxiao charge over, and a powerful aura surged out from her. Members of Lunar Right Hall, fight to the death. She was very clearly aware that they wouldn't spare them even if they surrendered, especially the female members of Lunar Right Hall. So, they had no choice but to fight to the death. With just that little bit of strength, Gu Yuexian and Luo Chongxiao charged over to Mu Qingfeng. Her strength was sufficient to resist one of them, but she was facing both of them. Moreover, she wasn't a match for Gu Yuexian at all, let alone their joint forces. So it only took a single exchange of blows for her to be blasted flying. Hall Master! The eyes of the countless members of Lunar Right Hall almost split apart from rage when they saw their Hall Master being blasted away. A mouthful of blood essence sprayed from her mouth. She was about to stand up when Luo Chongxiao stomped his foot against her stomach, causing another mouthful of blood to spray from her mouth. Luo Chongxiao revealed a lustful grin to Gu Yuexian as he said, Brother Gu, why don't you go first? Then I won't decline. She's clearly inexperienced. Perhaps I might be able to charge into the half-saint realm by engaging in mutual cultivation with her. A wisp of an evil smile appeared on the corners of Gu Yuexian's mouth as he walked over to Mu Qingfeng. Bang! Suddenly, Gu Yuexian's figure was blasted flying, and a loud explosion resounded as it smashed against the nearby entrance to the Grand Hall. Everyone in the surroundings stopped moving, and they looked over towards the spot that Gu Yuexian stood on just moments ago. At this moment, a white-haired man was standing there. The man was naturally Yang Yi. He'd immediately rushed over when he heard that Lunar Right Hall was in danger, and he wasn't too late. Yang Yi walked step by step towards Mu Qingfeng. Luo Chongxiao's eyelids twitched, and he spoke solemnly, Who are you? Gu Yuexian's strength far surpassed his own, but Gu Yuexian wasn't even able to fight back against this man who stood before him. So, it was obvious that he was absolutely no match for the white-haired man as well. Yang Yi paid no attention to Luo Chongxiao. He gazed at Mu Qingfeng and said, I'm sorry for dragging Lunar Right Hall and you down. It's you. Mu Qingfeng's eyes opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. Pooh. Meanwhile, Luo Chongxiao suddenly pressed his foot down, and another mouthful of blood sprayed from Mu Qingfeng's mouth. Luo Chongxiao gazed ferociously at Yang Yi and said, No matter who you are, I'll kill this woman if you take another step forward. Trust. Luo Chongxiao's voice stopped abruptly. A hand was on his neck, and it was Yang Ye's hand, of course. Luo Chongxiao's eyes were opened wide, and his eyeballs that were filled with terror had almost popped out from their sockets. I don't. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia's hand squeezed down, and cracking resounded as the color in Luo Chongxiao's eyes vanished. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings and said, "What? All of you intend to stay and eat with us? Don't let them leave." Mu Qingfeng spoke abruptly, and her voice was icy cold and filled with terrifying killing intent. "In the future, all right?" replied Yang Yi. Yang Yi wanted to kill all of them as well. However, he knew that doing so would definitely alarm the hallowed grounds. At that time, it would become troublesome for him. Mu Qingfeng hadn't even finished speaking when the people in the surrounding retreated like a receding tide, and it only took less than 2 breaths of time for them to vanish. Only Yang Yi and Mu Qingfeng remained in the grand hall of Lunar Right Hall. "I never expected that you would actually dare to come here again," said Mu Qingfeng. Yang Yi withdrew a 1,000-year-old fire crystal and gave it to her. She glanced at him and took it before she said, "You should leave as soon as possible. It's dangerous to stay here." "Where are your grandfather and grandmother?" asked Yang Yi. He still remembered that Mu Qingfeng had a grandfather and grandmother at the half-saint realm. "They're dead." A wisp of killing intent flashed through her eyes. "They were still when disorder started to arise in the city. I know that it was definitely the Gu clan and the Luo clan. I went to seek help from the hallowed grounds, but they refused to do anything. Yang Yi, tell me what exactly is going on. Why has the city fallen into such a state?" Yang Yi asked, "Do you trust me?" She replied, "Who else can I trust?" Yang Yi said, "Everyone beneath the half-saint realm in the city might have to die." "It's the hallowed hall behind it?" asked Mu Qingfeng. Yang Yi nodded. She asked, "Why?" Yang Yi told her about the hallowed grounds plan. A long time passed before she spoke again. "So that's why. No wonder Saint Spirit fruits appeared in the city. And no wonder the hallowed halls is remaining silent. No wonder." So everything was part of their plan. Mu Qingfeng intended to leave when she spoke up to this point, but Yang Yi stopped her and said, "You intend to head out and expose their scheme?" "Of course." Yang Yi shook his head and said, "Not to mention whether they would believe you. Even if they did and joined forces to resist such a fate, do you think they would be able to resist the half-saints of the hallowed grounds? The only outcome would be that the people in the city would die even faster. Moreover, if you do expose it right now, then you'll probably be killed in an instant." Mu Qingfeng fell silent for a long time, and then she asked, "Then what should we do? Should we just allow them to succeed?" Yang Yi said, "Are you willing to head to Profounder Continent?" Mu Qingfeng was slightly stunned, and then she fell silent for a long time before she said, "I am." She didn't know when she would die if she stayed, and she would even die at the hands of someone who was supposed to be on her own side. She didn't have the ability to change such a fate, and all she could do was flee from it. Yang Yi nodded and said, "I'll take you out of the city later, and then you can head to Profounder Continent. You're a member of the Hallowed Halls, so those experts who are guarding the teleportation formation will probably not stop you from traveling to Profounder Continent." She asked, "Then what about the others in the city?" Yang Yi spoke indifferently, "Die." He hadn't come here to be their savior. He couldn't stand by idly for Mu Qingfeng and the other members of Lunar Right Hall, and that was because he owed them a favor. As for the others, they weren't related to him at all. Mu Qingfeng was at a loss for words. Yang Yi said, "Chose some members of Lunar Right Hall. It's best if they are those you trust, and I'll take all of you out of the city. Remember that they must be trusted. Don't notify anyone you don't truly trust, or it'll end with their deaths." Mu Qingfeng nodded. She wasn't a hesitant person, so she immediately turned around and walked out of the hall. It only took her less than 15 minutes to lead a group of people into the hall. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth instantly twitched because she'd brought over 300 people with her. Mu Qingfeng seemed to realize that she'd brought a little too many people with her, and she said softly, "I was truly unable to bear to leave them behind." Yang Yi sighed softly, and then he glanced at them and spoke coldly. "I presume Qingfeng has told all of you about the situation. Now, those who are willing to leave the city with me can stay behind. As for the rest, you can leave. Are you Xianxia? Suddenly, a voice sounded out. Xianxia looked towards its source and saw Mu Ling standing there. The gazes of the others descended onto Xianxia when they heard her. After all, they'd heard so much about Xianxia. Xianxia nodded and said, I'm Xianxia, and I'm young man as well. Clamorous noise resounded as all of them gazed at Xianxia with disbelief, and it was like they were asking how he dared to come to the hallowed grounds. You actually dared to come to the hallowed grounds again. Mu Ling spoke in a low voice. Xianxia waved his hand and said, It isn't the time to speak about all of that. My only question is whether all of you are willing to head to Profounder Continent. I can't guarantee that all of you will definitely be able to live if you go there, but I guarantee that if you don't betray Profounder Continent, then Profounder Continent won't betray all of you. I'm willing. Mu Ling was the first to speak. The ancient city of Hallows isn't the same city that we used to know anymore. Those who are strong can do as they please, and those who are weak can only suffer humiliation and death. Moreover, Gu Yuexian and Luo Chongxiao died here just now. I believe that the Luo clan and Gu clan will definitely dispatch experts to avenge them. We'll definitely die when that happens. Mu Ling is right. I'm willing to head to Profounder Continent as well. Me too. None of them chose to stay in the city, because the current ancient city of Hallows was a city where those beneath the half-saint realm might die at any moment. Suddenly, the sword spirit appeared by Yang Ye's side. This won't do. The sword spirit said, Xianxia, you can't take so many people with you. The disappearance of so many people will definitely be noticed by the experts of the city. At that time, all of you will die. Xianxia frowned as he hadn't thought about that. Indeed, it was utterly impossible for him to lead so many people out of the city at one go. Place all of them within the primordial pagoda? That was a sound plan. But could he use such a method? Besides the people closest to him, he didn't dare allow another soul to be aware of the primordial pagoda. Xianxia remained silent for a long time before he said, I have a way to take all of you out of the city. However, all of you have to stay unconscious. To be honest, I can't allow others to be aware of this method of mine. It wouldn't be a problem if they were unconscious before he placed them within the primordial pagoda. Many of them were slightly hesitant because it was equivalent to putting their lives in the hands of another. I'm willing to do that. Mu Qingfeng was the first to speak. Sure enough, as soon as she made her stand clear, many others started voicing their agreement in succession. Xianxia gazed at the sword spirit, and the sword spirit nodded. She was just about to act when a voice suddenly resounded from outside Lunar Right Hall. How dare you kill a member of my Gu clan? Die! Bang! As soon as that voice finished resounding, the entire Lunar Right Hall collapsed while dust and dirt shot endlessly into the air. A white-robed old man and a black-robed old man stood in midair high above Lunar Right Hall. The black-robed old man frowned as he looked at Lunar Right Hall that had been blasted apart. He said, They're all dead. The white-robed old man grunted coldly and said, How could they possibly survive when I was the one who attacked? The Lunar Right Hall was really audacious to actually dare to kill a member of my Gu clan. I really was too impulsive. I shouldn't have annihilated them in an instant. I should have captured them, extracted their souls, and used their souls to light soul lanterns. The black-robed old man shook his head while his brows were knit even more tightly together. He said, Gu Tan, do you feel like something is slightly off? What is? Asked the white-robed old man. The black-robed old man replied, You really are able to instantly annihilate them with your strength, but you didn't use your full strength. Under such circumstances, many of them should have definitely been able to survive. I'm not doubting your strength, but you should be clearly aware that many members of Lunar Right Hall are quite strong. Gu Tan pondered deeply for a moment, and then his divine sense swept out into the ruins of Lunar Right Hall. A long time passed before he withdrew his divine sense, and a ferocious expression appeared in his eyes. There are no corpses or traces of blood at all. Someone saved them. Who do you think it is? The black-robed old man's face had become solemn. Even though Gu Tan's eyes had a ferocious expression, there was also a tinge of solemnness in there. After all, that person had been able to rescue a few hundred people before them without making a single sound. That showed that the person's strength might far surpass them. Could it be Supreme Exalt he or the others? Asked the black-robed man. Guten shook his head and said, no. If it was him, then he would only have to say the word. After all, how could we not give him face? The black-robed old man sighed softly. Forget it. Let's not pursue the matter. Even half-saints aren't safe in this world now. We should quickly head back and cultivate so that we can step foot into the realm of high-grade half-saints as soon as possible. And that way we might have a chance at survival. Swoosh! Suddenly, a very fine and soft sound arose from the ruins. It was extremely soft, but Gu Tan and the other black-robed man had heard it. Get the fuck out here! Gu Tan roared furiously as he slapped his palm down, and the ruins below instantly exploded apart. Swoosh! That soft sound appeared in the distance. Gu Tan and the black-robed old man exchanged glances, and then they didn't hesitate to chase after it. It didn't take long for them to arrive before the city gates. He left the city. The black-robed old man spoke in a low voice. Should we pursue? One could only leave yet could enter through the grand formation around the city. Yes. A ferocious expression arose in Gu Tan's eyes. He seems to only possess a formidable concealment technique, but his strength should only be ordinary. Otherwise, he would absolutely not flee. The black-robed old man said, Gu Tan, forget it. He seems to be slightly mysterious. We've destroyed Lunar Right Hall, and it can be considered as avenging our juniors. Since he wants to save those members of Lunar Right Hall, then just let him. In any case, the members of Lunar Right Hall wouldn't dare to show themselves in the city anymore, and only death would await them outside the city and its grand formation. They were rescued right under our noses. That's like a slap to our faces. Once news of this spreads, we'll definitely become the laughingstock of this city. If you're afraid, then just head back. I'll pursue him on my own. Gu Tan's figure flashed out of the city once he finished speaking. The black-robed old man hesitated for a moment before following Gu Tan. The Gu clan was the #1 clan in the hallowed grounds, and he really didn't want to offend it. Just like that, both of them pursued Xianxia until they arrived in the mountains over 1,000 kilometers away. Gu Tan, he seems to be drawing us over here on purpose. The black-robed old man glanced at the surroundings, and his eyes were filled with vigilance. At this moment, Gu Tan noticed that the situation was bad as well, because a sound would resound every single time that they were about to lose track of Xianxia, and it allowed them to locate their target once more. Just as the black-robed man said, he felt that something was off as well. So, Gu Tan aroused the intent to retreat when he thought of that. Suddenly, a mysterious force appeared on them, and they instantly dropped down to the monarch realm. The Stone of Suppression. You're Xianxia. The black-robed old man was horrified, and even his voice was trembling. He didn't even hesitate to turn around with the intention of fleeing. Meanwhile, 50 half-saints appeared around them, and most of these half-saints were mid-grade half-saints. We're finished. Both Gu Tan and the black-robed old man had despair on their faces. 5 breaths of time later, Xianxia and the sword spirit appeared where Gu Tan and the black-robed old man stood just moments ago. As for the 2 old men, both of them were dead. You took quite a risk just now. The sword spirit spoke in a low voice. Even though you used the Stone of Suppression to suppress their cultivations and the sword domain to isolate them from the outside world, do you realize that the slightly mishap might have allowed those 2 supreme exalts of the hallowed halls to arrive here in an instant? Even though you have around 50 half-saint sword servants and the Stone of Suppression, not to mention those 2 supreme exalts, even one of them would be sufficient to make you suffer a miserable defeat. Xianxia nodded and replied, I know, but it would be a waste to give up on 2 half-saint sword servants. So, I decided to make a gamble. The sword spirit shook her head, and then she glanced at him and said, Fine, I won't say anything about that, but I really don't know why you took the risk of being discovered by the hallowed grounds in order to rescue those people from Lunar Right Hall. Even though most of them are at the Monarch Realm, what can Monarch Realm experts do at this moment in time? They aren't even qualified to be cannon fodder. Yang Yi suddenly walked over to her when he heard this, and he just stared her in the eyes. The sword spirit didn't shrink back and met his gaze while she said, "What? Did I say something wrong? Tell me, what can they do for profounder continent once they get there?" "Nothing. Conversely, they might be a burden for us." Yang Yi gazed at her for quite some time before he said, "Sword spirit, you're not human, so I understand why you think like that and say that. However, you must understand that not everything in this world has to be worth it in order to be done." The sword spirit said coldly, "Useless kindness while what really matters." Yang Yi shook his head, and he didn't argue with her. The sword spirit's character had changed drastically upon fusing with her main body in the sword precursor. So, wasting his breath on her was completely pointless. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and then Mu Qingfeng appeared here. However, she was unconscious. Yang Yi looked at the sword spirit, and she grunted coldly before she flicked with her finger. A strand of sword energy entered the center of Mu Qingfeng's forehead, and then it didn't take long for her to regain consciousness. Mu Qingfeng glanced at the surroundings and said, "We've left the city?" Yang Yi nodded and said, "Even though you've left the city, I can't send all of you to profounder continent, because the experts of the hallowed grounds are definitely waiting to ambush me at the teleportation formation. On the other hand, if I leave all of you to head there by yourselves, then with the strength all of you possess, it's probably very likely that you'll be annihilated if you encounter any defiant profounders. So, you have two choices. The first is to look for a place to hide for now. The second is that I'll take all of you with me. However, all of you have to stay unconscious." Mu Qingfeng fell silent for a long time, and then she said, "You can't be protecting us forever. Only strength can guarantee our survival in these current times. So let us go on our own. We'll survive with our own ability. As for the danger we might face, that's a form of tempering to us." Yang Yi gazed at her for a long time before he waved his right hand, and then all the members of Lunar Right Hall appeared here. He said, "I respect your decision, and I feel that it's the right one. Relying on others during such chaotic times will never work. We have no choice but to rely on our own hard work to survive. The door to profounder continent will always be open to all of you, and you can go there whenever you live." Mu Qingfeng nodded and said, "What are you planning on doing now?" Yang Yi said, "I was just about to ask you something. I know that the hallowed grounds has a treasure called the divine spirit fruit that can increase one's lifespan. Do you know where they keep it?" "The divine spirit fruit?" Mu Qingfeng was slightly stunned and said, "The lifespan of someone you care about is almost exhausted?" Yang Yi shook his head and pointed at his own hair. "I'm the one without much lifespan left. I headed to the ancient city of Hallows earlier just for the sake of the divine spirit fruit." Mu Qingfeng sized up Yang Ye's white hair and said, "So that's why. I thought you made yourself look like that on purpose, but I never imagined that it would be because of that." When she spoke up to this point, she hesitated for a moment before she flipped her palm. A crystalline and translucent fruit appeared on her palm as she said, "This is a divine spirit fruit." Yang Yi was stunned, and so was the sword spirit. Mu Qingfeng said, "This was originally prepared for my grandfather, but he was killed before he could consume it. I have no use for it as well, so take it." Yang Yi didn't refuse. He took the divine spirit fruit and swallowed it immediately. A short while passed before the sword spirit said, 10 years. You have 10 years of life now. Don't rashly activate the sword domain against an enemy you can't fight again. Otherwise, you might not be so lucky again." Yang Yi nodded, and then he withdrew 10 1,000-year-old fire crystals and passed it to Mu Qingfeng. "I won't just take your divine spirit fruit for nothing. These fire crystals should be of use to you." She didn't refuse because it was just as Yang Yi said. They really were very useful to her. Yang Yi glanced at Mu Qingfeng and the others, and then he said, "Good luck. I hope we'll be able to meet again." As he spoke, Yang Ye's figure flashed and transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the horizon. Meanwhile, the others who laid behind Mu Qingfeng had regained their consciousnesses. Mu Qingfeng withdrew her gaze, turned around, and gazed at them as she said, Now, if we don't become strong, then only one outcome awaits us: death. So, if you don't want to die, then fight and cultivate desperately like your life depends on it. As they flew in the air, the sword spirit suddenly asked, "What do you plan to do now?" Xianxia replied, "I want to form an army of high-grade half-saints. I don't have any candidates now, so I can only ask for some from the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders." "Do you think they would give that to you?" said the sword spirit. "They won't? Then I'll take it by force." Xianxia went into hunt and kill mode. Now, he killed every single defiant profounder he saw, and if he met experts of the hallowed grounds, he killed them as well. Regardless of whether it was the hallowed grounds or the defiant profounders, they sought to utilize the blood, resentment, and baleful energy of billions to form a pillar of blood. But Profounder Continent was a place that Xianxia wanted to protect. So both the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders were his enemies. With the heir of over 50 half-saint sword servants, the stone of suppression, and the sword spirit, it didn't matter even if he encountered formidable defiant profounders because they were practically incapable of resisting him. It was even the same when he faced mid-grade half-saints amongst the defiant profounders. In just a short period of 5 days, Xianxia had gained over 20 new sword servants, and many of them were mid-grade half-saints. Xianxia sat cross-legged on a mountain peak while the energy of the heavens and the earth around him converged incessantly towards him. In the last 5 days, the only thing he'd been doing besides hunting and killing defiant profounders was cultivating like a madman. Because even more primordial violet energy would appear within him every single time his cultivation improved. And it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the cultivations of the half-saint sword servants within him advanced by leaps and bounds upon absorbing the primordial violet energy. Profounder Continent had too few half-saints. Not only were there so little, their quality was far inferior to that of the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders. If it wasn't for the fact that the teleportation formation could only teleport 100 people at a time, Profounder Continent wouldn't have even the slightest chance. Of course, the main reason why Profounder Continent was still safe was because the defiant profounders had placed all their efforts on the hallowed grounds. Once they finished slaughtering all the inhabitants of the hallowed grounds, their next target would be the continent. At that time, it would be a moment of life and death for the continent. Xianxia was very well aware that he didn't have much time left. Huff! Xianxia opened his eyes and let out a breath of foul air. He said, "Looks like it isn't that easy to increase my strength. Fortunately, I'm still able to obtain a small amount of primordial violet energy even if my strength doesn't increase. The only unfortunate part is that it isn't as much as when my cultivation improves. Forget it. I can't rush such things." Meanwhile, the sword spirit appeared by his side. She said, "I've refined all the defiant profounders we killed lately into sword servants." Xianxia nodded, and then he completed the refinement before tossing all of them into the primordial pagoda so that they could absorb the primordial violet energy there to improve their strengths. Xianxia looked up at the sky, and then he frowned while a trace of worry flashed through his eyes, because the sky was truly blood red at this moment, and he could sense dense baleful energy and resentment within it. Moreover, the smell of blood was simply nauseating. Besides the ancient city of Hallows, all the other inhabitants of the hallowed grounds are probably dead. "We don't have much time left," said the sword spirit. "I know," Xianxia continued. "It seems like the true objective of the defiant profounders isn't to destroy the hallowed grounds. Otherwise, they would have attacked it a long time ago. Their true objective is probably to break open the heaven path, obtain quintessence violet energy, immediately attain the Saint Realm, and then attack the outer heavens. That's the hallowed grounds' objective as well." The sword spirit said, "You want to protect Profounder Continent, and that means that you have to go against the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders at the same time. To be honest, I don't think you have even the slightest chance in such a situation. I still intend to try." Xianxia took a deep breath and said, "Moreover, even if I abandon Profounder Continent and don't go against the hallowed grounds or the defiant profounders, but what about them? Would they let me live? They won't. Regardless of whether it's the hallowed grounds or the defiant profounders, they won't let us live. The sword spirit intended to say something, but a ray of light suddenly appeared in the distant sky. They exchanged glances, and then Yang Yi immediately concealed himself in the shadows. It didn't take long for two black-robed men to appear where Yang Yi and the sword spirit were. They were defiant profounders. Both of them glanced at the surroundings, and then one of them frowned and said, "Zhu Yu, did you make a mistake?" The man called Zhu Yu shook his head and said, "You know that my cultivation technique is quite unique. Otherwise, the exalted monarch wouldn't have sent me to search for the one who has been killing our people. I clearly sensed that someone was here, but why did that feeling vanish completely when we arrived here? Who do you think is killing our people all over the hallowed grounds?" The black-robed man spoke abruptly. "Besides the hallowed grounds, do we have any other enemies here?" Zhu Yu continued. "Even though the half-saints of the hallowed grounds are inferior to us, there are some supreme experts amongst them, like the Hallowed Lord and the Supreme Exalts. We would definitely be no match for them if we encountered them." The black-robed man grunted coldly and said, "I don't know what the exalted emperor is doing. Our strength is entirely sufficient to break through the grand formation outside the city. But he refuses to attack the city and insists on keeping them alive." "Be careful of what you say." Zhu Yu spoke solemnly. "Lin Kai, don't speak about the exalted emperor again. You should be clearly aware of his methods. Keep your mouth shut if you don't want to die a horrible death." Lin Kao grunted coldly and said, "It's the truth. Our strength is sufficient to annihilate the damnable hallowed grounds. So long the hallowed grounds is destroyed, then we can crush Profounder Continent in an instant. At that time, we'll be able to gather the baleful energy, resentment, and blood of tens of billions to break open the heaven path. Once that is done, we'll be able to instantly recover our past strength, and we'll truly be free." Zhu Yu looked up towards the sky, and his eyes carried a trace of deliverance. "Right, that person ordered us to come here and search for the primordial pagoda all those years ago. We traveled through countless stellar regions yet didn't even lay eyes on its shadow, and we even went through countless difficulties for it. Now that terrifying thing within us is gone, and we're finally free." Lin Kai said, "The reason we're following Xianxia is because we hope that he'll lead us to destroy the heaven path. But even you should have realized that he's delaying. I think that he's definitely hiding something." "Shut your mouth," Zhu Yu suddenly roared. "Die yourself if you want to. Don't drag me down with you." As he spoke, his figure flashed with the intention of leaving. Suddenly, both their expressions changed drastically before a ray of light flashed. Hiss! Zhu Yu's body instantly stiffened, and there was a hole on his chest. A ray of white light flashed before Zhu Yu's corpse vanished on the spot. After that, a ray of light vanished into the sky. At the same time, a voice resounded from afar. "This the strength of the defiant profounders? What a joke! You're so weak yet actually dare speak about crushing my hallowed grounds? How laughable! Go and tell that fellow, the exalted emperor, that he should walk to the ancient city of Hallows on his knees and seek judgment. Otherwise, I'll fucking kill every single defiant profounder I see until all of you go extinct." Lin Kao was first stunned, and then his face immediately darkened when he heard those words. It became as unsightly could be, and besides being unsightly, his face had ferocity, a trace of humiliation, and a trace of terror on it as well. Zhu Yu had been instantly annihilated, yet he hadn't even caught the shadow of the assailant. How could he not feel humiliated or terrified? It didn't take long for all of Lin Kai's emotions to be transformed into rage. Monstrous rage. "Hallowed grounds. You're courting death." Lin Kai's voice resounded like the furious roar of a wild beast. 2 hours later, another defiant profounder was killed a few thousand kilometers away. There was a row of words written with blood by that defiant profounder's corpse. "It was I, your grandpa, the hallowed grounds. You defiant profounders are so weak. If you dare speak about crushing my hallowed grounds again, then the next to die will be you." Just like that, a few dozen defiant profounders died in a single day, and every single one of their corpses was accompanied by a similar row of words. The people in the ancient city of Hallowed were seething with excitement. Even the people who were fighting for the Saint Spirit fruit had stopped. Who is it? Could it be Supreme Exalt He? That was fucking amazing. He killed a few dozen defiant profounders in a single day. I thought that they were formidable, but now it would seem like they're so weak. Ha ha ha. If it wasn't Supreme Exalt He, then it was Supreme Exalt Mu. Did all of you notice? They've been leaving the city every single day. Why have they been leaving the city? It's definitely because they went to kill the defiant profounders. All hail Supreme Exalt He. All hail Supreme Exalt Mu. All hail Supreme Exalt He. All hail Supreme Exalt Mu. The city was filled with cheering, and the gloomy atmosphere of blood and battle had vanished. The atmosphere amongst the defiant profounders was naturally the complete opposite. After they found out that numerous defiant profounders had been killed by a mysterious expert of the hallowed grounds, countless defiant profounders had gathered outside the ancient city of Hallowed. Moreover, more and more defiant profounders were rushing to the city. It only took a short period of 2 hours for over 1,000 defiant profounders to gather outside the city. Moreover, there were many mid-grade half-saints amongst them. Ha! See! They're like cornered beasts that intend to take desperate measures. They can't wait to try and bite us. Profounders of the hallowed grounds stood on the city walls and roared with laughter at the defiant profounders. It was I, your grandpa, the hallowed grounds. You defiant profounders are so weak. If you dare speak about crushing my hallowed grounds again, then the next to die will be you. One of them pointed at the defiant profounders below the city and roared with laughter. Did you hear that? If you dare to speak about crushing my hallowed grounds again, then the next to die will be you, all of you. Ha ha ha. You're courting death. Someone roared furiously from amidst the group of defiant profounders, and he slapped his palm towards the city. An enormous energy palm flashed off and smashed against the city wall. Suddenly, a barrier of light appeared around the city, and the enormous energy palm merely caused a wave of rumbling to resound upon striking the barrier of light. The city walls weren't damaged at all. Ha ha! Come on. Use a bit more strength. Have you not eaten? The profounders on the city walls roared even more madly with laughter, and it seemed like they were venting all the depression they accumulated from being oppressed by the defiant profounders throughout these days. All the defiant profounders on the ground below revealed terrifyingly ferocious expressions on their faces, and there were only flames of rage burning in their eyes. It's just a grand formation. I'll fucking break it open. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from within the group of defiant profounders. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice, and they saw a white-haired man walking slowly towards the city gate. There was a sword in the white-haired man's hand. The white-haired man wore a black robe. Besides his unusual hair, his dressing was completely like the other defiant profounders. He was Xianxia, of course. After he heard the conversation between Zhu Yu and Lin Kai, a plan had appeared in his mind. That plan was to add fuel to the flames between the hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders. Only if they were engaged in battle would they have no time to pay attention to Profounder Continent, and only then would he have even more time to prepare. The defiant profounders could do nothing to the people within the ancient city of Hallows if they refused to leave the city, and they could only slaughter the experts outside the city. But once all the experts outside the city and within the hallowed grounds had been annihilated, the next target of the defiant profounders would be Profounder Continent. So, he had to add fuel to the flames between them and make that flame blaze. Many defiant profounders frowned when they saw Xianxia because they couldn't sense his realm of cultivation. However, that was exactly why he seemed mysterious in their eyes. Many defiant profounders immediately moved aside when they saw Xianxia walking towards the city. As soon as Xianxia arrived before the city gates, a barrier of light that was formed from talisman markings appeared around the city walls, and the powerful energy contained within it caused Xianxia's brows to knit together. Just a single glance allowed Xianxia to realize that it was an extraordinarily powerful formation, and he couldn't break through it even if he executed the Triapex sword technique. If it was in the past, then he would naturally be helpless against such a formation. Yet now, more and more profounders were gathering atop the city walls. At this moment, the experts of the hallowed grounds weren't laughing with ridicule. Because anyone who could attain the monarch realm and above was no fool. Since that white-haired man had dared to step forward and speak about breaking open the formation, they felt that he definitely had some ability. So worry had started to appear in the eyes of many. Because once the formation was destroyed and the defiant profounders swarmed into the city, then it would definitely be a calamity for them. Quickly notify Supreme Exalt He and Mu. A half-saint of the hallowed grounds immediately decided to notify the Supreme Exalts. After all, they could only feel truly at ease if the two Supreme Exalts were here. Meanwhile, more and more defiant profounders were gathering below, and their numbers had almost doubled to 2,000. Moreover, all of their gazes were on Xianxia. The experts of the hallowed guards were fully vigilant while the defiant profounders were staying prepared at all times. They were prepared to enter the city and kill at any moment. Xianxia took a deep breath, and then he tapped his sword against the barrier of light while everyone watched. Ripples appeared on the barrier of light, but it wasn't damaged at all. The experts on the city wall immediately heaved sighs of relief. However, Xianxia suddenly took his sword in both hands and swiftly twisted it. A strand of decay sword intent shot deep into the barrier of light from the tip of his sword. In an instant, the barrier of light melted like snow in hot oil. The expressions of the experts on the city walls changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, whereas the defiant profounders below were overjoyed. "Brothers, come with me and kill." After the hole in the barrier light expanded to a diameter of around 6 m, Xianxia immediately withdrew his sword, and then he transformed into a ray of light that shot through the barrier and entered the city. It wasn't that he refused to make the hole bigger, it was truly impossible for him to do so, because the formation was too powerful and creating such a hole was the limits of his ability. After Xianxia charged in, countless other defiant profounders behind him immediately charged into the city as well. "Kill! Annihilate all these bastards of the hallowed grounds. Go on talking shit. Go on. Ha ha ha." It only took a few breaths of time for countless defiant profounders to charge into the city. It was naturally impossible for the experts of the hallowed grounds to just stand by idly and wait for death to arrive. So, countless half-saints flashed out from the city and entered into battle with the defiant profounders outside the city. As soon as Xianxia entered the city, he immediately concealed himself because he didn't want to take the lead and bear the brunt of the retaliation from the hallowed grounds. Of course, he didn't leave as well. He hid in the shadows and collected the spoils of the battle. He was undoubtedly the one to gain the most from the battle between these two forces. It only took less than 15 minutes for him to gather over 50 corpses of half-saints. Moreover, more and more half-saints were still perishing. This excited Xianxia to the point he almost cried out with joy. The hallowed grounds and the defiant profounders were growing weaker while his side was growing stronger. Xianxia was confident that if he was given a little more time, then Profounder Continent would definitely be able to turn the situation around and transform into a powerful force. While he gathered the corpses of half-saints, Xianxia was carefully observing the battle. He noticed that the defiant profounders really were much stronger than the experts of the hallowed grounds. Under the condition that they were all in the same grade of the half-saint realm, the hallowed grounds would need 2 to 3 half-saints to resist a single defiant profounder, and it would take the joint forces of at least 5 half-saints of the hallowed grounds to kill a single defiant profounder. Bang! Bang! Countless half-saints were fighting throughout the city, and it was obvious how destructive such battles were. Besides the city walls, the buildings in an area of a few thousand kilometers within the ancient city of Hallows had been transformed into powder. Of course, more and more half-saints were dying from both sides. At this moment, Xianxia had gathered almost 500 corpses, and over 100 of them were defiant profounders. "How dare you!" Suddenly, a furious howl resounded from outside the city, and then Supreme Exalt He and Supreme Exalt Mu appeared within the city. At the same time, those experts from Nameless City, and even Inin were by their side. Bang! Supreme Exalt He swung his palm downwards, and 2 defiant profounders were instantly slapped into pieces. The other defiant profounders immediately stopped fighting when they witnessed this scene, and they gazed at Supreme Exalt He with solemn expressions on their faces. Xianxia's heart shook when he saw Supreme exalt he and the others, and he cursed in his heart. He had no doubt that all of this would stop here. After all, even if a corpse was lying right in front of him, he wouldn't dare touch it while Supreme exalt he and Supreme exalt mu were here. Once Supreme exalt he's group arrived, the two forces in battle had split apart and stood in confrontation with each other. Unexpectedly, Supreme exalt he's group didn't attack the defiant profounders. Supreme exalt he merely glanced coldly at the defiant profounders, and then his gaze swept through the half-saints of the hallowed grounds before he said, "What's going on?" "They broke through the formation," said one of the half-saints. "The Saber Emperor, Xianxia?" The expressions on the faces of Supreme exalt he and the others changed slightly. If there was someone amongst the defiant profounders that they feared and even felt terrified about, then it was definitely the leader of the defiant profounders, the Saber Emperor Xianxia. After all, he was in existence who could fight the hallowed lord. That half-saint shook his head and said, "It wasn't. It was a white-haired defiant profounder. He broke open the formation with a single stab of his sword." A white-haired defiant profounder? Supreme exalt he and the others frowned. Supreme exalt he was just about to speak when someone amongst the profounders of the hallowed grounds shouted, "Supreme exalt he, Supreme exalt mu, kill the defiant profounders and make the might of our hallowed grounds known. Kill the defiant profounders. Kill the defiant profounders. Kill the defiant profounders. Kill." All the experts of the hallowed grounds started to shout loudly as well. The defiant profounders hated them, and they hated the defiant profounders as well. During this period of time, countless people related to them had died at the hands of the defiant profounders, and it was even to the extent that their loved ones were amongst the dead. So, how could they not hate the defiant profounders? Supreme exalt he and Supreme exalt mu's faces were unsightly. They weren't afraid of these defiant profounders because there were no supreme experts amongst them. The hallowed grounds would definitely win the battle. However, they didn't want to, because the outcome of that would be one where both sides were heavily injured. Moreover, once they killed these defiant profounders, then it would definitely draw over even more defiant profounders. "He's that Supreme exalt he who insulted all of us." Meanwhile, someone suddenly pointed at Supreme exalt he from amongst the group of defiant profounders. In an instant, the gazes of countless defiant profounders descended onto Supreme exalt he, and their eyes were filled with ghastly killing intent. If they weren't afraid of the strength possessed by Supreme exalt he and the others, they would have attacked by now. Supreme exalt he frowned. He wasn't able to figure out why they were so hostile to him. After all, every single one of them seemed as if they wished for nothing more than to drink his blood. The defiant profounders feared Supreme exalt he's group, and Supreme exalt he's group feared the defiant profounders as well. They naturally could gain victory over this group of defiant profounders. But if they did kill these defiant profounders, it would be no different than destroying the peace that had been maintained between both sides for so long. It would spoil their plans. "Let's retreat for now," someone spoke abruptly from amidst the defiant profounders. The other defiant profounders exchanged glances, and they nodded. Too few of them had come to attack the city this time. After all, there were only about 2,000 here. Moreover, they didn't have any high-grade half-saints amongst them. All of them were ordinary and mid-grade half-saints. While they were arrogant and proud, they were no fools. Fighting the hallowed grounds to the death with so few forces was undoubtedly a foolish action. Supreme exalt he instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he noticed that they intended to retreat. He didn't want to fight them as well, because suffering heavy losses on both sides wasn't beneficial to either side. That was exactly why they'd been hiding within the city. At this moment, the retreat of the defiant profounders was undoubtedly the best outcome. Right when they were about to retreat, an unexpected event suddenly occurred. A ray of light suddenly shot out from the group of experts from the hallowed grounds, and it instantly smashed against the chest of one of the defiant profounders. That defiant profounder wasn't harmed, and only his shirt was blasted apart. Everyone here was stunned. After being stunned for a moment, that defiant profounder immediately flared up. "The hallowed grounds won't let us leave. Kill." 1 is enough, 2 is a gain for us. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately charged forward. As for the defiant profounders who stood around him, they charged forward as well. Obviously, they felt that the hallowed grounds refused to let them leave. Since it was like that, it was better to take at least one member of the hallowed grounds down with them. Who did that? Supreme Exalt, he was furious. However, he didn't have the time to consider that question because numerous defiant profounders had charged over to him. Bang! Suddenly, numerous defiant profounders flashed in from the city gates, and there were even a few high-grade half-saints amongst them. Flood the city with blood. Someone howled amidst the battle. Supreme Exalt, his face instantly warped when he heard this voice, and he roared with fury, Yang Yi, I'll tear you into pieces. Even though that voice from before had been changed, Supreme Exalt, he was no ordinary expert. How could he possibly not discern it to be Yang Ye's voice? But when he looked over towards the source of the voice, that spot was completely empty. Right when he was about to search carefully, the defiant profounders at the side had charged at him. Defiant profounders surged incessantly into the city while more and more half-saints of the hallowed grounds rushed towards the city gates from all directions. A shocking battle erupted within the ancient city of Hallows. Meanwhile, the person who started the entire battle, Yang Yi, was no longer in that area. He'd gone to the technique pavilion within the city. He did want to continue gathering even more corpses, but Supreme Exalt, he had noticed his presence. So, if he were to stay behind and continue gathering corpses, then he would definitely be dead if he was noticed. As he gazed at the plaque that read, Technique Pavilion, a smile appeared on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth. Everything in there is mine now. As he spoke, Yang Yi swaggered into the Technique Pavilion. There were 10 saint rank techniques within the Technique Pavilion, and he'd never forgotten about them. In fact, he'd wanted to obtain them for a very long time. Now that practically all the half-saints in the city had gone to the entrance of the city, didn't it just happen to give him the best opportunity? So, how could he possibly let such an opportunity slip by? Yang Yi didn't stop at all and headed straight for the 3rd floor. Yang Yi gazed at the Dao rank techniques here, and then he waved his right hand. Countless Dao rank techniques were instantly placed within the primordial pagoda. After that, he ascended to the 4th floor. Yang Yi laughed with ridicule as he gazed at the barrier of light that covered the jade counter. He flashed over to one of them, and then he stabbed his sword against it. The barrier of light trembled violently while countless cracks appeared on it, and then it shattered apart. Yang Yi frowned because there were only 3 black scrolls on the jade counter. Did someone else take them? Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment before he waved his right hand and took the 3 scrolls. He naturally wouldn't see what techniques they contained right now. He flashed over to the 1st level, and he was just about to walk out the door when a voice resounded by his ears. You're Yang Yi, right? You really are an extraordinary genius in the sword Dao. You blasted apart the violet light barrier with just a single strike. You're much stronger than many old fellows. No wonder the hallowed grounds suffered so many losses at your hands. Yang Ye's heart shook, and he stopped moving before turning around to look towards the source of the voice. There was a sling chair made of bamboo at the nearby corner on the left, and an old man with slightly narrowed eyes laid on it. The old man's hair was ruffled, his clothes ragged, and his face was covered in wrinkles and stubbles. He seemed very unkempt. Yang Yi withdrew his gaze, and then he looked out the door and said, I never expected that a supreme expert like you would actually be hiding in the Technique Pavilion. He hadn't noticed the old man when he entered, and he still hadn't noticed the old man when he left. Obviously, the old man's strength wasn't inferior to Supreme Exalt He, and it might even be stronger than Supreme Exalt He, because Yang Yi still didn't sense a trace of danger coming from the old man even now. That was the most terrifying part. A supreme expert? I'm just an old geezer who's about to reach the end of his lifespan. I didn't intend to call out to you, but I wasn't able to stop myself in the end. It's rare for a genius to appear on Profounder Continent, and it would truly be a pity if you were to die here. Based on how you acted earlier, you clearly aren't satisfied with just 3 scrolls of techniques, and you intend to head to the Treasure Pavilion and Cultivation Technique Pavilion, right? Said the old man. Yang Yi didn't conceal his intentions and nodded, because he really did intend to plunder the treasures of the hallowed grounds. Every single pavilion has a pavilion master. If you went to the other pavilions first, then I presume you would either be dead or fleeing for your life right now, said the old man. Are they very strong? Asked Yang Yi. The old man said, Your strength improved at an extremely swift pace. You haven't experienced the consolidation of your cultivation through time, nor have you tried to sense and comprehend the world, and you haven't even comprehended your own Tao. Everything you've learnt are only things you gained from your predecessors. Even though that allows you to be extremely strong and even possess the ability to surmount your realm of cultivation to do battle, you're still too weak when compared to some people. For example, I can defeat you with one move and kill you with the second. Do you believe that? Yang Yi shook his head and said, I don't. Why don't you give it a try? Yang Yi replied, Senior, what would you do if you can't kill me with 2 moves? The old man flipped his right palm, and a fruit appeared in his palm. A refreshing fragrance instantly suffused the air when the fruit appeared here, and just the fragrance itself made Yang Ye's entire body feel relaxed and refreshed. The old man said, This is the Saint Spirit fruit that those fellows were fighting for. It's yours if I can't kill you with 2 moves. I won't kill you if you can't resist 2 moves of mine, but I just so happen to lack someone to pour my tea, and I feel that you're very suitable for the job. Can that fruit really help someone attain the half-saint realm? Asked Yang Yi. The old man answered, It depends on the person. Yang Yi nodded and said, I understand. Let's do it. Are you that confident? Asked the old man. I'm really very curious. Yang Yi continued, I'm curious how you will make me feel despair with just 2 moves. Meanwhile, the old man slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was calm and it wasn't sharp at all. He gazed at Yang Yi for a short while before he nodded, and then he slowly stretched his right hand forward and made a grasping motion towards Yang Yi. In an instant, the scene in the surroundings changed. Everything vanished, and only he and the old man remained. Yang Ye's expression changed, and it was unprecedentedly solemn. He gazed at the old man and said, The might of a domain! At this moment, tempestuous waves were surging through his heart. It was the first time that he'd witnessed the might of another domain besides his own sword domain. At this moment, Yang Yi understood once more how there was always someone stronger and greater in the world. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to realize that something didn't seem right. He couldn't put a finger on it, but in any case, he felt that there was something wrong with this domain. A moment later, Yang Yi realized what was wrong. This domain wasn't independent, and it had merged with the world and relied on the force of the world. On the contrary, his sword domain was independent, and it didn't rely on the force of the world. Looks like you've realized. The old man suddenly said, This isn't a true domain. It's something I created myself. I call it a pseudo-domain. Even though it isn't a true domain, it isn't weak at all. My strength will rise 5 times while within its scope, whereas your strength will decline 5 times. Moreover, you'll be suppressed as well. As soon as the old man finished speaking, Yang Yi suddenly felt a strand of powerful pressure descend upon him. It was like instantly feeling 10 mountains pressing down upon him, and it caused his internal organs to be on the verge of shattering. A strand of sword intent surged out from within Yang Yi. 2nd level heaven rank sword intent? Not bad. Unfortunately, it hasn't broken through the shackles of the heaven Tao, while this domain of mine is equivalent to the heaven Tao of this world. So your sword intent can't destroy it, said the old man. Sure enough, Yang Yi felt that his sword intent was forcefully suppressed by a mysterious force upon leaving his body. We'll consider this as your loss, all right? Asked the old man. You've really surprised me. However, you truly underestimate me if you think you can make me admit defeat just like that. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Ye's body that had bent slightly under the pressure of that mysterious force gradually straightened. In the end, 2 rays of light surged from within his eyes before countless rays of light shot out from within him, and they surged around him. Crack! It sounded like glass had shattered, and then the surroundings returned to normal. The sword domain, that's the sword domain? The old man gazed at Yang Yi with a trace of fervor in his eyes. Yang Yi nodded. Even though he'd shattered the old man's domain, he still felt admiration for the old man, because he wouldn't have been able to overcome it if he hadn't grasped the sword domain. Second-level heaven rank sword intent could suppress a half-saint, but his heaven rank sword intent was suppressed to the point it couldn't even resist just now. Since he comprehended sword intent, this was the first time he'd experienced something like that. The fake is fake in the end. Domains surpass the heaven Tao and are independent above it. Yet mine contains the heaven Tao and has fused with the world. Even though it's still strong, its strength is limited. The old man shook his head and seemed slightly flagging with interest. I have one more move. Are you sure you want to receive it? Of course, replied Yang Yi. The old man said, I can discern that while you've grasped the sword domain, you haven't fully grasped its strength. If my attack surpasses the scope of your sword domain's ability, then you'll suffer from backlash. You have around 10 years of life left, and your hair is completely white. I presume it's because you forcefully utilized the sword domain, right? Yang Yi nodded and said, Indeed. However, I still want to try that move of yours. The old man nodded in response. Since it's like that, then let's begin. As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed his finger at Yang Yi. Yang Yi instantly felt a strand of mysterious energy lock onto him. It was very strong, and it was even stronger than the pressure he experienced from the old man's domain, causing him to even be unable to arouse the intention to resist. However, that wasn't the end of it. He felt suffocated when it locked onto him, and it was like someone was squeezing down on his heart. Yang Yi was horrified. What sort of force is this? Should I use the sword domain again? However, he absolutely didn't dare to do that, because even if he could resist this attack by utilizing the sword domain, he would die right away, because he didn't have enough lifespan to do that. How should I resist this move without the sword domain? This attack is called the Hellshackle Finger. It encloses the world in a cage, and it uses spiritual energy as a shackle. It's something I created many years ago. I once utilized it to surmount my realm of cultivation and kill a high-grade half-saint that was Supreme Exalt He's equal. At that time, I'd only just attained the half-saint realm. Now, I only have to issue a command and you'll be instantly crushed into bits. Of course, you can activate the sword domain as well, said the old man.